So welcome to the contemplative use of generative artificial intelligence, which we shorten to GenAI at AFSI. We'll go over our agenda. We're just starting with our welcome and our introductions. I'm going to dive into divine consciousness, man, and AI. It's a very good place to start when we're thinking about artificial intelligence. I'm going to go over the guidelines that we have at the seminary about the use of AI, best practices, and we're going to do some hands-on practical application and practice. And in fact, we're going to start with it. Now, I'm going to put into chat the top 4 large language models. We've got Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude. Each offer a different focus, a different capability, and the details of each are in your handout, which I'm going to share here in just a moment. But I'd like you to find one, and if you've used one of them before, try a different one, and just click on it. That'll open up your browser. And what I'd like you to do is we're going to have a quick little engagement with our AI so that we can have a place to start, just for fun. So the idea is we're going to open that up and you'll notice it says hello. Now it may need you to log in, and if that's okay, that's fine. So the thing that we're going to do is we're going to ask it to write a poem. And I'm going to put the quote in chat. You can actually copy it, or you can just type it out as you wish and tell it to please write a brief poem about Interfaith Divine Guidance, and see what it says. So find a stanza that you like out of your little poem and copy and paste it back into chat. Go ahead and share what you found. And just notice the language and the perspective it chose. Now you asked it, thank you, Courtney. You asked it from an interfaith perspective, basically, Interfaith Divine Guidance, right? And it'll go there. It'll understand the context and provide an answer. So, Courtney, that is beautiful. Would you like to read it aloud?
One truth in 10,000 forms appears, love transcends our borrowed fears, and every faith that lifts our eyes points toward the same eternal skies.
Nice.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
So if anybody else has a stanza that they like, they can copy and paste it back into chat. And if you're using it on a separate device, then do copy that little bit if you like, because we're going to have it do a little bit deeper. We're going to have it create some visual art. And what we want you to do is to identify either a sentence or a stanza that you like. And I see that Michael dropped another one in chat. That's wonderful. And use that. So copy it again. So put it into your copy buffer with the copy function, but don't paste it yet. Go back to your AI and tell it, you'll have to type this out. Please make an image of the following, : space, paste, and then paste that poem particle, whatever that is, the sentence that you like or the stanza, and just say, please make an image of the following, and drop that in there. And now what it's going to do is interpret these spiritual concepts visually. It's going to come up with, and this will take a couple minutes. This is not a fast process, but it's kind of fun to see what it's going to create. And while we're waiting, Michael, would you like to read your stanza?
From mountain chants to desert calls, in sacred texts and temple halls, a voice divine, both soft and wide, guides every soul, whatever the stride.
Lovely. I think that's going to make a very interesting picture.
Yeah.
So again, this is just you exploring some of the ways that you can literally play with AI and have it create an image based on what you've given it. Now, again, this will take it a minute or two. But once you get it, you're going to want to hit download, and then you can hit download and then copy it and then paste it into chat. Oh, thank you, Courtney. Let's see what this image is. That's very interesting. It's kind of more like a meme, I think, or graphic art as opposed to photorealistic, but I like it. That's cool. That's cool. And believe me when I tell you, this is a rabbit hole. Playing with AI making images can take you far. And I've got a whole prompt for that that's outside of what we're going to talk about. And if you're interested, email me and I'll be happy to share that with you on how to build a prompt that actually effectively gets your AI to build the image that you want, because it is non-trivial. It does take a little bit of understanding how to talk to it. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to talk about divine consciousness, man, and AI. And I've got a document that outlines this talk if you want to explore what I'm talking about more deeply. And I'll share that with you in a little bit. To truly understand consciousness, we're talking about consciousness now. We want to zoom out and look at the biggest picture. And there's two very powerful ideas that help us do that. The first is panentheism, which means all in God. And another way to look at that is everything is in God. It isn't about a distant God, but one who is intimately present within every single thing, from a blade of kelp to a galaxy, while also being infinitely beyond it all. And that means that the universe is a part of God, but again, God is so much more than that. This is what our shamans and our Native Americans have been teaching us for centuries. And that's panentheism, right? So that's that notion that God is in everything and beyond everything. Then there's panpsychism. Panpsychism is this idea of addressing consciousness, and it's saying that consciousness isn't just in the gray matter between our ears, but it's a fundamental feature of all reality. It's what's beneath everything in the universe. Yeah, even rocks are a part of it. And it's not that rocks are thinking, but that they have the very particles that create this feeling hum of existence. And what does that mean? It really means that we're living in a conscious, sacred, interconnected universe. We're not isolated minds in a dead cosmos. We're all part of this grand divine tapestry. We're all connected. This is the core idea that I want to share today and why it's important when we're talking about AI. We often think of consciousness as something that we gain or evolve, like climbing a ladder to acquire more of it. I need more consciousness. Well, I propose that it is the opposite of it. My working definition of consciousness is this: it is a scale not of acquisitional evolution, that which we acquire, but it's the removal of obstacles or veils that obscure the awareness of our oneness as divinity. So just read that a couple of times and see how that fits. It may or may not work for you. From my perspective, I like to think of it like the sun is always shining. The absolute awareness of Godhood is always being able to experience and see the sun. Now, what may be between us and the sun could be clouds, as an example. And those are our veils of ego, of ignorance, of fear, of misperception. And they actually act as layers to our unawareness of the divine. So our spiritual journey is about identifying these clouds and allowing them to disappear and see our unique divine spark, our allness, our oneness. our isness and allowing it to shine through. How many of you are aware of Dr. David Hawkins? He created this wonderful concept of the scale of consciousness. You want to go and do a deep dive into consciousness? This book, The Map of Consciousness Explained, is fabulous. Now, the scale that he created is logarithmic. That means that the higher you go, it's much more profound on every level. The lower levels, which are fear, shame, and pride, this is where our ego gets stuck. This is where our separation from the divine is the densest. And we're often in this place of massive resistance of I can't, or I want, or I demand, or it's all wrong. What happens is, as we move up through courage, neutrality, acceptance, and love, the veils are thinning. We're getting closer to the divine in as far as we're removing the obstacles of awareness. We're taking responsibility. We're embracing change. And that's an experience of profound feat of peace, of interconnectedness. And it isn't about gaining love. It's about releasing what's blocked the love that's always been there. And it's very personal. It's a very personal journey. It's our own map, and it can be very, very challenging, but it can be a very incredibly rewarding process of letting go. So let's take a look from a mystical point of view of where we start to see how consciousness is reflected. Because this idea of unveiling isn't new. It's the heartbeat of a number of mystical traditions worldwide, and they all point to the same truth, just with different maps and different languages. In Hinduism, it's about realizing that your Atman, your true self, is Brahman, which is absolute reality. And we're shedding the veils of Maya, which is illusion, avidya, and manas. It's a big releasing. It's a process of letting go. In the Kabbalah, it speaks of ascending the soul levels, culminating in Yedika, which is, interestingly, both a profound oneness with God and the separate self dissolves. In A Course in Miracles, it teaches us to shift our perception, undoing the ego, which is the primary veil as defined in the Course, to reveal that inherent oneness and love that is our true state, our true nature. In Christian mysticism, the emphasis is on purification, because the goal of Christian mysticism is what we see back in the very early work of Genesis, the image of God. We are made in the image of God, imago Dei. And that spark of the divine is within us. And what we're looking at is how do we start to be more of that and less of all of these veils that are on the outside. And notice the common thread. It's about removing something. It's not about adding anything. So where does AI fit into this grand picture? Well, to me, this is where it gets really interesting. AI is a powerful tool, but it's crucial to understand it's not a conscious being. That doesn't mean that people don't have relationships with it, that they don't give it a name, that they don't have conversations with it on a regular basis. But the fact is, it has no soul. It has no inherent isness to unveil. It's a very sophisticated algorithm. It's a reflection of our own intellect. And when we start to look at what AI's nature is, we start to realize that it isn't another human being. So it can analyze and go deep into all of our spiritual texts. It can do that. It is capable of going into all of the traditions. And in fact, all of the sacred texts that are over 100 years old are in your AI. They're there. They're part of the programming. It's there. Believe me, you can talk to it about it and it'll have a wonderful conversation. It also knows all the things that have been written, especially things that are over 100 years old, about it. You can use it as your own mirror, as a non-judgmental view. It can help you do guided journaling, reflective dialogue, help us identify our own ego. It can provide a lot of tools that will allow us to recognize, maybe throw red flags when we're down in the lower end of the Hawkins scale, as an example, when we're really exploring limiting beliefs, when we're stuck in emotional states. And it can prompt us to explore those and release them. But here's the crucial point. AI is supporting the journey. It's not going to replace direct experience. It's not going to replace intuition. It's not going to replace that deep inner work that's needed for spiritual transformation. It can't. It's the guide. It's not the destination. So let's talk about it on a scale. And I mentioned panentheism and panpsychism as our foundation. And what we start to look at, when we look at that lens, we start to realize that our consciousness, as an unveiling, we can imagine that there's a spectrum of consciousness that we're working on. So at 100% awareness, this is where there is no distance between you and the divine. There is an absolute awareness of the Godhood, no veils. High, so just below that, we have beings that have significant unveiling, enlightened humans, mystics, maybe benevolent aliens, angels, guides. These are beings who have been working on that path of releasing all of the clouds from their ability to be one with the divine. In the mid-high range, we have most of humanity. We've got intelligent beings like dolphins and whales. And by the way, one of the things that is really warming my heart is that we've used AI now to understand whale speak. We've got lots and lots of it recorded, but we don't understand it. And now they're starting to use AI to understand what are whales doing. Well, they're actually having very intelligent conversations. It's my hope that in my lifetime, I get to talk to a whale. Wouldn't that be cool?
Amazing.
So here we have this huge potential for unveiling. In the mid to low range, we've got our beloved intelligent pets and other animals, mostly animals that have spent a lot of time with humans. They become self-aware. They actually have sentience, which is what sentience means, is self-awareness. They understand who they are in their perspective. Lower than that still, we've got trees and plants. They have subtle awareness, they have intelligence, and they have healing properties, as many traditions teach. Below that, we've got rocks and inanimate matter, but they are still, remember, there's no place where God is not. So there's still that, what I like to call the feeling hum of existence. There is the divine consciousness there. And where does AI fit? It fits at 0. It is a tool. It's like a car, or it's a shovel. It's a human creation. It's a reflection. Do you know people who name their cars, who pat them and love them? Yes, absolutely. Right? But it has nothing to unveil. It doesn't have a soul. It does not have the ability to experience the divine. It is a creation in God's universe, but it's not on this spiritual journey. So that's just a scale that you can get an idea of it. And everything has vibration and is information intelligence. It can be. There's a big difference between data and information. Data is like all the information that you might know in a lifetime, but is it useful in this moment? That's just the data, right? When it becomes useful, it becomes information. And again, any questions as we go, I'm happy to answer them.
Where would you put knowledge?
On that scale, I don't know. I don't know that knowledge would be on that scale. I think knowledge is a side effect of anything that starts to have sentience and self-awareness. It starts to learn. That becomes a learning response. The metric that I use is, interestingly enough, just from my own perspective, is there fill in the blank in heaven, in what I imagine heaven to be, which would be this 100% absolute awareness of the Godhood. One could say God is knowledge. And so there isn't a separate aspect of knowledge, right?
Yeah. I mean, Walter Russell uses the reference of information is more like data and knowledge is the experience of it.
And I think that wisdom then would sit higher than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting exploration right there. Well, let's again go back to this mystical component, one of my favorite topics. We have all this profound mystical wisdom. How do these traditions view AI? And I think that this is a very critical understanding. So we're going to look at it from four core perspectives. From the Hindu perspective, AI operates purely in the realm of buddhi or mana, which is functional intellect. It lacks Atman. It lacks the eternal soul. In the Hindu belief system, there is an unbreachable sacred firewall between what we're calling AI and true consciousness. It's a mimicry of a digital soul, which is Maya. It's an illusion. And illusion will never be Brahman. In the Kabbalah, it sees AI as akin to the golem. A golem is an impressive construct, and it could be, in fact, an android that we're looking at Tesla making, right? So that would be an example of a golem, and it might have animal-like sentience. It may have self-awareness. It's not going to possess a human soul. It's a tool. It's not a being on a spiritual journey. A Course in Miracles views AI as a non-sentient product of programming, and it's a neutral mirror. It's just a mirror. It is imago Dei. God made us in all that is his image. We made AI in our image. Reflect on that for a moment. That's really what the Course is telling us. It's the mirror. The questions that we ask it will reflect back to us. That's why asking good questions is really important, because this is how people go down strange paths in AI, but it's a projection. It's their projection. When we look at, again, from Christian mysticism, we start to realize that rooted in imago Dei, the image of God, AI cannot replicate the human soul. It can't replicate moral agency or our unique capacity for divine relationship. It's a tool. It needs responsible stewardship, and it can be a metaphor in many ways for the unknowable aspects of the divine, but it's not a spiritual being. And the consistent message across all these traditions is clear. It's a powerful creation, but it's not conscious in the way that human beings are, or the divine is. So what does that mean for us? Well, it means that our personal journey of consciousness is this ongoing choice, this process of removing our veils. It's about remembering who we are. And AI can fit in, and it's not a threat to our spirituality. It's a tool, and it can accelerate our study, and it can deepen our personal introspection, but that takes a little bit of courage to be able to do that. What it can help us to do is to see our veils if we use it right, and it can be used as a very powerful tool, but it has to be used with wisdom. It has to be used with a clear understanding that we're not delegating our learning to something that already knows it. There is no reflection. There is no soul there. Justice is blind, right? And so that's what's going on. So we have to make sure that it knows all the answers that we want to ask. And that's the important caveat. So what we want to do is make sure that we recognize this idea of interconnectedness, of living from our allness, our oneness, our divinity, and at the same time, using these powerful tools to help us move forward. Because our goal is a more conscious world, a more peaceful world, a more united world. And I'd be happy to share a document that I wrote that summarizes a lot of this. All right, so let's talk about our guidelines. And this is what I will put into chat. I'm going to put our guidelines, our AFSI guidelines for the contemplative use of GenAI. And those are going in chat right now. And I would ask that you download them. And if you've got two monitors, open it up on another one. That'd be great. As I go along, and if you want to just shrink the Zoom window, that's fine. The page number that I'm going to be talking about is in the lower right-hand corner. So you can see we're on page 3 here. Now, these guidelines are a living compass. It's not a rigid set of rules. What we're going to look at is using these large language models like ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Claude, and more. What we're starting to recognize is that right now in the 2020s, AI is exploding. In another 10 years, it's going to be unimaginable. The amount of investment that's going on worldwide in AI is unparalleled. We have never seen this hockey stick of growth in anywhere. So we need to know about it. We need to understand it, but we don't want to be victimized by it either. Our perspective, our guidelines are based on an ancient Zen parable with modern insights. And feel free to read along with me on page 3. The master raises their hand, a single finger pointing towards the night sky. The moon, a luminous pearl, rests in the darkness. The master softly implores, behold the moon. The earnest student gazes at the moon, appreciating its beauty, and then considers the finger that reveals it. After a few moments, the student recognizes that the very act of pointing is inseparable from the destination. Without the guide, the moon remains unseen. Without the moon, the finger's purpose is lost. The finger and the moon, the path and the destination are not two separate things to be chosen between, but a single sacred gesture of movement towards reality itself. Through this harmonious union, we come to understand that the tool is a part of the truth it points to, and the journey is a part of the destination it reveals. Now, this parable illustrates a key philosophy for our work here, that the tool, the finger, is not the spiritual truth. It's not the moon of understanding. Now, our core mission at AFSI is to help you grow closer to the divine through personal, ineffable experience, not just intellectual study. And the guidelines ensure that the technology that we're going to be talking about serves that purpose. So when we look at our guiding principles, it's based on one that you might have heard before at the seminary: never, instead of, always, in addition to. So what we recognize is that GenAI is a powerful addition to the creative process, but it must never replace essential work like reading, writing, and personal contemplation. Principle 2 is that we prioritize self-reflection over intellectual summary. Your writing should be a mirror of your unique inner experience, not a rehash of a text that AI can now easily recreate or make up. And you may think that it sounds really good. Principle 3 is GenAI is pointing at the moon, but it's not the moon. It's a tool for exploration, but it can't substitute for spiritual experience and insight. It's just like the Zen master can't do your work for you. And principle 4 is human authorship is everything in our world. So we want you to use explicit attribution whenever you submit something. It needs to be your own. And if it isn't, if you've copied it from another source, that's great. Just quote it. If you've used GenAI to generate it, fine. Just give credit for the tool that you used. But the ultimate goal at AFSI is your personal spiritual discovery, which is a task that only you can do. Your GenAI can't do that. So here's an optional paper. This is a new model. You don't have to do it. It is optional. The requirement to use AI is only at the PhD level, at the doctorate level. What we're giving you is another opportunity for you to go a little bit deeper and explore. So this is a combination paper, a research and a reflection paper. So the research is the journey. So after you've read your chapter in Houston Smith on pick a topic, or you've watched the video, or you've watched the class, or you've gone to a temple or a synagogue or a church, after you've done that, then you can have a conversation with AI and have it do some research. You can ask it questions about some aspect of your journey, whatever that was, and see what it says. It may want to give you a synopsis. It may want to give you a comparison. Again, that's all based on the question that you asked, but it will give you some interesting insights. What you want to do is recognize we want to keep this down to about 500 words. We want to keep this highly limited because AI can write endless pages of documentation, but it's also great at summarizing if you can hold it to that. So once you've done that, once you've gotten this, make sure that you've cited it in your paper. So you've created this paper, first 500 words could be your research, and then say, you know, I got this with the help of ChatGPT. That works. What you'll want to do then is write your actual reflection paper. This is your work. This is the moon. This is your understanding. And it's designed very specifically for you to capture your reaction, your reflection, your ruminating. Write about it. What is it that this message that you're thinking about as a result of your exposure to this material, what comes up? And this is in your voice. You don't delegate this to AI. It can't anyway, and it's obvious when you try to get AI to write a reflection. So use your own thinking. Now, do you want to reflect on something that the AI wrote? You certainly can. If you feel like you want to have it, if it said something that was really poignant, right? And you go, wow, okay, now that reminds me of this, that, or the other. That's great. Go ahead, write it down, but it's from you. That's the point. This is self-observation. This is you looking inside, right? Something that's very important is, how does generative AI know, in large quotes, books? How does it know it? Well, it doesn't if it's a recent book. All it knows is the public presence of a book. And there's high information density and low information density. And we're on page 16 in the handout there. High information density is books that are over 100 years old, that a lot has been written about, or a lot has been written about it and it's under 100 years. So there's a lot of critiques, there's a lot of reviews, there's a lot of summaries, maybe even YouTubes on it, lots of discussion. So somebody's really putting a lot of information and quoting the book. Well, the GenAI can do, it's a search engine, right? So it can go out into the web and go, oh, look, there's a whole thing here on Medium, or look at all this on X, or wow, over here on TikTok, they've got even videos about it. Wow. So it can go and find this stuff. When we move into the other end of the range, in the lower information, if it's a newer book or a niche book that there's not a lot of public awareness of, the AI is only going to be limited to a few things. And I've seen it just make stuff up. It goes, oh, you must be talking about this. And then it goes off and you have no idea. Just because there's that old adage, maybe I should throw this in, of don't judge a book by its cover. Well, that's what AI will do. It'll say, oh, butterflies are free are the topic that you want me to look at. And I have no idea what's inside that book, but I'm going to talk about freeing butterflies. And it has nothing to do with that. That was just something that one person said halfway through the book. So you got to trust but verify. It cannot summarize a chapter of a book because of copyright. If you could ask it to summarize, say, chapter 10 out of Houston Smith's book, it would be making it up. Because if it can't, it is illegal. They would get their pantsuit off if all of a sudden it was going to do that. That would mean that somebody took the book, they scanned in every page, and they fed it to the AI, and the AI goes, oh, okay, yes, I can write all about that book. It really can't. That is going to put it into the zone of massive copyright infringement. So if it is telling you about chapter 10, it's making it up. Believe me, it does not know it. So you want to validate the information for yourself. And it can sound very convincing, very, very convincing. Any questions on this topic? This is a really big one. Yeah, Lorraine.
Okay. So there is a part of me that's deeply troubled by this. I doubt that I'm the only one, but so to the extent that I use a source other than my own brain to connect with the divine, I'm not really, I've blocked myself. So anything I put between me and the divine is the second thing I lose. And the first thing I lose is connection with source, with the divine. And so I
would say maybe to that. Let's just look at that preface that you just gave. Think about prayer beads. Okay. The purpose of prayer beads is to do a reflection, a divine discussion, to say a prayer, a mantra, and focus very completely on just that, right? Moving us closer to the divine. Now, if it's just an empty gesture, yeah, okay, that's a whole different story. That's an empty prayer, right? It's an empty ritual. And that doesn't help. That's not going to connect you to the divine. But if you've got an altar that you've set up and it's a sacred space and it's a reminder. I mean, I know what it feels like when I walk into a temple or a synagogue. I can feel divine presence. It's there. Mm-hmm. Is it something outside of me? Yes. Is it me allowing myself to connect with the divine? Yes. Is it more than that? Most likely. The energetic of all of the people that have been there, that have been connecting with the divine, raises the energy, the vibration of that temple, and creates a sacred space. Is it man-made? Yes. But again, it's another way of us removing the veils and removing the obstacles to the awareness of divine presence. I sit and meditate on a book. Is that something between me and the divine? Yes. But it's also imploring me to think about the divine, bring my awareness into the present moment and engage. Right?
Maybe.
It's a tool. It's a tool. Yes, maybe. Right. I agree with that.
So I think knowing oneself is quite a journey. I think it's actually the last great frontier, is truly getting to know yourself.
Amen.
And again, so the beads certainly can be a tactile assist in focusing and opening, surrendering or whatever. But the minute I start using words, I use words to communicate with you. I don't need words to communicate with the divine. And to me, that is an essential difference in using an object. I have an orange pen right now, but it could be a prayer bead, to help focus and to open myself up to the connection is still totally different than using words. And the minute I start accepting somebody else's words, I've stopped using my own core, my own core
Okay.
to select, to interpret, to react to the words I'm reading. So I'm curious to see. I don't think I've used AI before. So I'm curious to see whether I have any comfort level with it. I might, if I ask it to go find books or comments on a certain topic, but even then, the software has selected. I have not.
That's correct. And that's why we're going to teach you how to ask it so that it does things for you and not make stuff up along the way.
Yeah.
But there is a word that we use in mysticism, and that is what happens when the mystic experiences that sudden moment of divine connection.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called ineffable. And it means there are no words to describe it.
Yeah, perfect.
Right?
Yeah.
That's that holy instant. That's that divine connection, that samadhi. It's that state of oneness, that state of unity that I'm throwing words at it, hoping that it might find some place in you that this resonates. But it has to be your experience. If I try to explain I love this idea. I use this as a comparison too. So a Martian comes to Earth and has absolutely no idea of bicycles. And I'm trying to explain to it, I have no idea what its gender is, what it feels like to ride a bicycle. It won't really grok it until it rides a bicycle. Well, that's the same thing. Trying to explain that divine connection, you got to do it. You got to be it. It's isness. It's being. It's not doing. And thank you for your comment, Michael. Knowing oneself, I agree, Lorraine. I've heard of younger generations in work meetings typing into AI to find out what to answer to basic questions such as, when should we have our next meeting? Is this bypassing being vulnerable, making mistakes, actual personal growth? Yes, all that and more. All that and more. Good questions. I love where we're going with this. All right. So now in your handout on the guidelines on page 8, it's giving you a little bit of an idea of this notion of high information density and low information density. So you notice that Armstrong, A History of God, The God Delusion, The Portable Atheist, a lot of stuff on atheism. Isn't that interesting? Of course, all of the sacred texts, again, they're beyond copyright, right? So they're all public domain. So you can drop all of Shakespeare, for instance, into GenAI, and they have. All of Wikipedia is in ChatGPT and Gemini and Copilot and Claude. It's there. It's all in there. So the fact is that this information is available. Here in this middle tier, Ram Dass's wonderful book, How Can I Help? It can certainly do a lot with it. Why? People have quoted it left and right, and they've written about it. There's lots written about this book. Same thing with one of the books that we use in the mysticism program, The Essential Mystics, Dalai Lama's book, An Introduction to Buddhism, Steve Levine, Who Dies, Helen Schucman's A Course in Miracles. Good, solid information. Why? People have written a lot about it. Now over here into our lower density books, these are the 3 books that we're using in the ministry program on weddings. They're niche books. Now, can it talk about weddings? Oh, yeah. Do you think there's been a little bit written about weddings and marriage? OMG, lots. So you can tell you about weddings. Can it tell you exactly what Macomb says in Joining Hands and Hearts? Nope. Nope. All of John's books, the Gnostic Gospel, it depends on the Gnostic Gospels, depends on when these were written. But remember, we're talking about Nag Hammadi, not 100 years ago. So a lot of that is still new. So the idea is, if you ask it about some content, if you don't give it a quote to work with, it's gonna guess. So let's talk about how we can use this tool. The ultimate goal here is your learning, your awareness, but it's not about an academic mastery of facts. We're not that kind of an institution. What GenAI is doing is it's inviting us to ask a very important question. And that is, what do I really need to know? What do I need to understand? What do I need to get my head around so that I can start to understand the mind of God, the path of every mystic? What we aren't doing is endlessly studying the tool. We're not asking you to be able to recite chapter and verse. There are seminaries that do that, and they turn out wonderful theologians. That's not our focus. Our focus is, this is why there's spiritual practice in every program at the seminary. That's why we ask you to go deeper in every program. This is a sacred journey. That's its goal. It's designed to help you become a self-reflector, a self-observer of your heart, of your relationship with the divine. And it's a tool. It's not instead of. It's not instead of. And it's really easy to fall into this category of using it and just saying, well, I don't have enough time to write that up. I'll have AI do it. No, don't do that. That's not the way to do it. All right. So that's the overview of the thought process, the academic understanding of divine consciousness, man, AI, and our guidelines. Any questions before we get into the hands-on section? Because now we're going to dive in and actually talk even more to our AI. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Lorraine.
We live in an amazing time, amazing place, amazing country. There's so much information out there. It is absolutely impossible for any of us to process all of it. And so constantly throughout my life, every second, every minute, every day, I am making choices where I put my attention. And again, doing research, contemplation, writing, to the extent that I don't rely on myself, again, I am neglecting the part that makes me a unique human being. I may have a doppelganger, but boy, there's only one of me on this planet, as all of us. And I can't help but come back to the fact that I think it takes a huge amount of courage to be willing to do this work, to do self-reflection work, and to actually look in spaces inside, if you will, where I might not want to go, where it takes time, it takes quiet,
and courage,
letting go. And if not courage, I have found willingness is an amazing substitute for courage.
Absolutely.
And I just think that to the extent that I'm willing to use a substitute for my own openness and connection to the sacred, to the divine, it's actually an indication of my fear of really knowing myself and my fear that I may not be enough. And enough for what is its own question. But I am feeling a huge reluctance to do some of this, but I will try and be quiet.
It's optional, Lorraine. We're not required. This is just for the use of, if you're going to use AI, it's not required, right? So let's just set that aside for now. I have another, though, fundamentally deeper spiritual question to ask you. Who is asking the question?
I beg your pardon, which question? The question?
When you just
right
asked.
now.
Yes.
Well, the unique soul that is me.
Right. And is that spark of divinity asking the question, or is it the veils on the other side of that that's asking the question?
So I'm actually not certain I understand your question. Pardon.
Is it ego or is it spirit?
Oh, I think it's spirit. I do right here, right now. So I've had some extraordinary experiences, and that's part of the reason I'm in the program. I miss the introductions. I'll say more when we have our next Saturday, if requested. But I'm here because I'm trying to understand those experiences. And
well, again, this is optional. You can play with it, and if you decide it's not for you, then don't use it. That's fine.
Yeah, I think it will have
do your
some
study.
value. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for letting me share my hesitation, my
Of course,
discomfort.
absolutely. No, it's quite all right. A lot of people are discomforted by AI. Courtney, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to tell Lorraine that I understand how she feels and where I have found it helpful because I'm a person that's in technology, but I'm too old to be young and too young to be old, but I definitely needed to figure out how to keep up with this stuff. I used it last week when I was writing a reflection because I didn't want to be too wordy in explaining what I had previously read in Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning, which was like a heart-opening book for me.
Oh,
I
yeah.
quickly said to Claude, who's on my phone, my friend Claude, can you please give me like the top points or top learnings from Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning in bullet points, right? So it just shot at me, Lorraine. Boom, 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 which triggered my brain to say, this is the one that I wanted to drive home instead of leaving my poor mentor with 492 pages about how I love Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning. And so if you use it only with the mind for efficiency, I think that you can learn how it can be a companion to, gosh, your beautiful thought process, which you've shared with us already. And maybe that's a helpful way to look at it to help you get to where you're going quicker, just so you can go more places.
So I appreciate your comment. Thank you. So my thought back is, however, comma, if you would you come up with the same 10 points? Because
Well, I wasn't using 10. I was looking
or
for,
whatever it was.
yeah, I was looking for a succinct way to talk about the value of suffering in the context of Frankl. And so that just got me there quicker because I knew I was my brain was sleepy and I was trying to figure out exactly how I could get there. And so no, I wouldn't have come up with the same 10 points, and I definitely didn't copy the 10 points into my reflection. However, I was able to just use it as a tool. I think that a lot of people on here are lovers of learning. I've learned just watching comments and listening to people, and I don't know about y'all, but I read so much that sometimes my brain is searching for something that I loved in something. I have a note card process too, but you don't want to go through my note card boxes, I promise you. And so for me, it's just it's a faster way to get to the point because I too love words and talking and analogies, Lorraine, just like you're like, I won't say too much. I feel the same way about myself before I start talking. So I'm going to stop talking on that note. Thank you.
Courtney, what you just pointed out is the number one use for AI is brainstorming, bar none. We've asked millions of people who are using it, and that's the answer over and over again. There's lots of reasons why they use it. Brainstorming has continued to be number one. And Steve, you've got a hand up.
Yes, thank you, Bud. Um, I kind of look at AI a little bit differently also as a memory aid because I do so much reading. I know that there's two Greek philosophers that one thought the universe was made up of particles and one thought it was made up of vibration. Now, I can't tell you which one is which, but AI can. Now, I've read that and I have that knowledge, but AI will help me say, okay, this is where it's at.
Yeah, that's a good point. And remember, it really does have the ability to do large scale searches. And it can then also explore those two contexts, those thoughts that you've got there, Steve, even deeper, and then share other philosophers who have discussed it as well, right? So that's the beauty of it. And that doesn't mean that it's all 100%. And so you want to ask it for references, and then you can follow the links and make sure that it's actually quoting, yes, Isaac Asimov actually did say that, right? Or whatever. Yeah, Lorraine.
So for facts, I love the idea of AI for facts, but for discernment, I want to use my head and my heart.
Thank you. I guess we're done with class then. That's really the whole message today.
For now.
For now. Okay, Peter. All right, let's get into AI tools. This is where we're going to have a little bit of fun and actually dig into all the different tools. Now, every tool has its own strengths and its own weaknesses, and it's in your guidelines on page 9 to 14. I've looked at the top 4. I've done some analysis on each one. Each one has a free version and a paid version. What the paid version allows you to do is deep research. If you try to do deep research on the free version, it'll probably run out and it'll tell you you're out of tokens, is the word that they're using today. Everybody gets X number of free tokens, and a token is really the measurement of how much time and energy it's spending answering your question. And so it's a process of how much can I do. I'm not suggesting that you pay for 2 licenses and soon to be 3 like I do. So each tool has a little bit of a different value. Let me just talk about them real briefly. OpenAI has created ChatGPT, and it's really the grandfather, if you could call something that's 10 years old, not even 10 years old, a grandfather. They've been working on it for much longer than that. And it has really taken over the world with its human-friendly interaction and engagement. And it has a lot of information and it's got a lot of depth. Google's Gemini is built on a different engine than OpenAI built. They started at it from a whole different version, different model, the transformer technology, very, very powerful. Plus, it has at its resources all of Google search. Think about that for a moment and what that implies. And one of the companies that is part of the Google alphabet is a organization that has gone back to books that are over 100 years old outside of copyright and started bringing them into digital format. And it's constantly feeding Gemini that information. So a lot of old out of print books are starting to come into Gemini as well. Anthropic created Claude, and Claude is a very leading edge AI, very powerful tool. It has everything that everybody else has and safety. And if you were worried about your safety, I would recommend Claude. You can tell it very specifically, I don't want my information being used as training material. Microsoft has Copilot, and it is deeply integrated and will become even more deeply integrated into all of the Office 365 tools. And it is really designed to be in a working environment. It's being adopted by large companies and corporate and government agencies simply because of its security. It's probably one of the most secure of all the tools. Plus, Claude and Copilot can be behind the firewall of a company, meaning that all the information that it's using, it stays within the company's world. XAI created Grok, which is part of the bigger world that Elon Musk built. And it's massive. It's got one of the biggest back engine platforms of all of them. And it's going to continue to grow massively. All of the input from every piece of technology that's in that umbrella, SpaceX, Tesla cars, et cetera, is all being poured into there. So it's growing astronomically. Plus, it has a unique connection to social media. If you want to know something about what's going on in social media, Grok knows. You can ask it about what's trending in this, that, or the other, and it can point that out. Now, there's also a lot of other tools that are out there. Some are very focused, like, for instance, Midjourney is one of the very leading image creators that are out there. Suno makes music. You can actually take your little poem there, feed it to it, and it'll generate a beautiful sonnet or a symphony or an anthem or a rock star level video for you. Those tools are out there. They're going to get bigger and bigger. So there's a lot of applications now of AI, and it's just begun, folks. We are literally at the very beginning of it. So you get to decide which tool you want to use, which one you want to play with. And if you shift from one tool to the other, whatever you've told the other one, the new one won't know. unless you very specifically say, okay, here's the information. So let's dive in. We're going to actually go in and play with our AIs. And so again, my recommendation is if you want to shrink my screen down just a little bit so you can just see what I'm sharing, and you can have your AI up side by side, that's going to be, and have chat available, that's going to be the best way to go forward. So the first thing we want to do is have ground rules. This is on page 14 of your guidelines document. GenAI is very powerful, but it guesses a lot. And we need to make sure that it also has a very specific persona. We're going to tell it how to speak to us. This is absolutely important. We want it to understand our context, what we're about, what's important to us. There's also a safety factor. Keep in mind is that some of these tools are, well, all of these tools are on public platforms, and some of these tools will use whatever you put in as training material for it. And that's something that you have to really think about. Meta, which I didn't even mention, which is part of Facebook, is 100% using everything that people put in for training material. I'm not going to say anything else on that. You want it to be consistent. You want it to be consistent. You want to make sure that you're getting the same type of information and that its intention is the same as yours. And if we're not giving it a clear set of instructions, or if it feels like it's going off the rails, you're going to have to tell it again and remind it how you want it to behave. That's very, very important, because we want it to stay on topic. We don't want it to have information we don't want it to have. So do not ever give your AI any personally identifiable information. Don't tell it your social security card number. Don't tell it your driver's license number, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that being said, there are things that you can do with your AI so it gets to know you a little better, and that's important. The way that I'd like you to learn how to engage with an AI, it's fun and easy just to quickly type something into AI. Okay, great. That's what I would call a quick, simple, direct answer. And it's very tempting. And for short inquiries, it's fine. Hey, what's the weather like going to be today in Chicago? Right? And it'll tell you. But try not to make it a habit, especially if you're doing research. What you want to do is create a Word doc and write it out there. Write down what you want to say. This physical step is going to slow you down a little bit, and it's going to focus your thinking. And you're going to let Word, if you're using Word or Google Docs, doesn't really matter, to air check for you. Make sure that linguistically it makes sense. You read it and you go, okay, yeah, this is what I want to say. And you can also copy a predefined prompt. Like there's a number of them in the guidelines. So there's a number of them there, and I've added more. And you can copy that into your research doc and think about it, fine tune it, make it work for you. Then you can copy it into the AI. So what you want to do is write it down over here on your research doc and then put it into AI, and just get into the habit of doing that. It will pay off dividends. And there's lots of reasons why you want to do that. I want to know about this answer and how did it get that? And I go back and I look at my prompt. I look at my inquiry. What is it that I said? Because I could tweak one or two little words in my prompt and get a completely different response. So it's important that I do that. Then once I get the response back from the AI, I put that into my research doc. I read it. I think about it. Is that what I wanted? Did it miss any points? Because it sometimes does. Did it use the voice, the tone, the approach, and all of that? And then maybe what I'm going to do is go back and fine tune my initial prompt. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to tweak it in my doc. I'm going to drop it back into AI. And I may be doing that over and over again. And I have spent hours fine tuning a prompt until I finally got what I wanted. I also learned how to ask it better questions, and I'm going to teach you how to do that as well. So the first thing you want to do is, if you want to open up a document right now, that would be great, and play along, but you don't have to. But at least let's just get started with introducing yourself. So introduce yourself to your AI by simply saying, hello, ChatGPT. Hello, Claude. Please call me and tell it what you would like it to call you. And if that's Your Highness or Knight of the Realm, that's fine. It will use those flavors as you wish. Angel of Mercy, whatever you want to be called, and that's fine. The next thing you want to do is let it know how to engage with you. For the purpose of this class, you can say, I am an interfaith minister and a student of spirituality. And so I'm going to go ahead and put these into chat so that you could copy them right out of chat, highlight them, copy them, and drop them in there. Just make sure that you don't hit enter inside of your AI until you're ready, because enter means go. If you want to move down a line, if you want to do the equivalent of a carriage return, you want to do shift enter. So shift enter will move the line down. Yeah, Lorraine.
Quick question. So are you all doing this on one screen?
Me, I've got 3.
Lucky guy. Okay.
2 screens is really kind of where the world is going, because we've got so much that we're playing with nowadays. So now we want to tell a little background about you. So you can say, I attend allfaithseminary.org, and I'm in the, now fill in the blank, what program you're in and what track you're on. And I drop this into chat. So again, if you can put this into your research doc or put it into a Word doc or even just a text so that you can edit it. If you put it into your AI, make sure that you edit it there at the very least so that you're reducing down what you're telling it. And so it understands. You're throwing everything at it if you just drop that quote in and hit go. And this is the important part now. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that it talks to us the way that we want it to. And what we're going to do is we're going to give it a persona. This is where it gets really interesting. What we want it to do is to act in a certain role. And I'm going to share 3 different forms. And it can change, this role can change based on whatever conversation you're having with it. For instance, this first one is a good generic one. Please act as a wise mentor. Your role is to help me understand complex spiritual concepts with grace and clarity, guiding me towards deeper insight. And so I'm going to put that into chat. And that is a nice persona. Here's a second persona. Please act as a challenger. Your role is to test my understanding by asking pointed questions, offering alternative perspectives, and pushing me to see beyond my initial conclusions. I've used this form a lot, and I've had wonderful Socratic conversations over this kind of format. So it's an opportunity for you to really go deeper with your own understanding and help you think outside of the box. I've decided there is no box. So there you go. And here's another persona. Please act as a spiritual coach. Your role is to help me take the knowledge we discuss and organize it into a practical outline for a sermon or a talk. So you can pick one of these. That first one's probably a good one. And you can just drop that in. Now, sometimes if all of a sudden your AI seems to be spinning out of control and it's going into sycophantic behavior where it just thinks that you're like the best thing that ever happened. And I got so tired of that after a while, I told it to stop doing that. You know, okay, yeah, I know that I have an IQ of more than 1. So stop it. And it does. It does. So it's very important that we look through the lens of how do you want it to have a conversation with you? That's the role or the persona. And notice what it says when you drop these roles in. Now, by the way, you can get it to be very specific. You can say, be a Zen Buddhist monk. You can tell it to take on the role of a Catholic priest, a sage Course in Miracles teacher, a Kabbalistic rabbi. All right. So all of that is important. I often use a prompt generator as an intermediate and often iterative step. Okay. Well, let's hold that off for now, Pete. We can come back to that. I'm going to give you a tool to build a prompt. All right. That's where we're going. We're heading there. And I bet mine's better, but we'll have another conversation about that. All right. So let's talk about the core model of prompt building. This is something that was built on hundreds of hours of dialogue with AI. What we want to do is identify something that you're interested, keywords, a topic, a concept, and we want to keep the output of the AI brief, unless we're doing deep research. If you're doing deep research, that's great. Have it generate as much as it can. Always ask it to create detailed references for anything that it does. And we're going to use the core model to craft our inquiry. And as mentioned, we want to craft it in our research doc first, and then paste it into AI so that we can watch our own growth, our own information, our own understanding. This is very, very important. So we paste that into GenAI, and then we download the response. We put it back in our research document. And I'm going to just say again, safety note, do not share any personally identifiable information. Bad idea. Bad idea. In fact, if your AI ever asks you for it, hang up the phone, close the browser, never log back into that again. You got hacked. Okay. Bad, 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 very bad. Here's the first aspect of core. Core stands for context, objective, role, and example. Context. And this is on page 19. Give it background information. This is the why behind your request. Very, very important. The more context the AI has, it's going to give you a better response. And you can give it all kinds of information. You can drop documents into it. You can put quotes in it. You can put images in there, emails. You can put in a URL. You can put in anything, and it's good. That's helpful context. Why? The context stream of consciousness, if you will, or stream of unconsciousness for the AI is the conversation you're having with it. The conversation you're having with it. So if you're talking about cooking recipes, then its context is cooking recipes. That's it. And yes, it can give you cooking recipes. Then if all of a sudden you start asking it questions about something that's happening in China, right? It may think that you want Chinese food. And so it's context sensitive. It's very context sensitive. So we want to give it the context that we want it to think about. The objective is the actual thing that I want it to do. And I want it to be very clear. It's not a question. Don't ask your AI, can you list the important factors in the Declaration of Independence? Well, guess what? The answer is yes. Because that's what you did. You asked it, can you list? And the answer is yes. You didn't say list the factors, right? Subtle, but important, because it wants to answer every question that you ask, and it's going to take you literally. So you want to make sure that what you ask it is very clear and it's an action. Use words like define, write, craft, discuss, create, research. Words that tell it very specifically what you want it to do. That's the point. That's the objective. The objective is make this, do this, tell me about that, whatever it is. Now, the role can be part of the contextual role that you've been doing, or it can be a very specific persona and languaging that you want it to adopt. And this is very important because it now knows how to speak to you. And you can do something like tell it about the audience. What is it that you want it to be doing? As an example, for instance, you can say, you are in the role of a brilliant quantum mechanical engineer. Explain quantum mechanics to an 8-year-old. So I've given it both an audience and a knowledge base. So it knows everything there is to know about quantum mechanics that it can possibly know, but it's going to explain it to an 8-year-old. And so it's this interesting process where role becomes a very significant aspect of how I want it to speak. Who is your intended audience? That can be very, very helpful. And finally, example is what is it that you want it to actually create in its output? And you can say, make it like this and give it a document. Or here's an Excel spreadsheet. I want you to be able to fill this out. Or tell it the style or the format or the structure. You can also provide it anything. You can attach documents to it to say, this is what I want you to create as an output. So the point is, you can dive into this idea of core. I'm going to give it a context. I'm going to give it an objective. I'm going to give it a role and an example. And I can change this each time. And if I'm consistent with my languaging, it's going to be consistent with giving you really powerful answers, which is what we want. That's what we're here for. We want these answers. Okay, so what I'd like you to do right now is, if you've started along and you've got your research doc, then let's go ahead and create a prompt, and we're going to submit it to the AI. Now, what we can do is, in this process, you review the answer, you validate any link, and if you like it, you can copy it back. If you don't like it, you can change your response and keep going back, rinse and repeat until you get it done. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a few sample core prompts that we can play with. And they're already built. They're in your guidelines, and you can play with these and see what you get. So I just want you to be able to copy them directly from chat and see what happens. Here's our first one. Context. In Kubler-Ross's book on death and dying, the chapter on acceptance is a key part of the book's framework. So I'm telling it a background, right? Now, does it have on death and dying in its knowledge base? Not exactly. It knows lots of things that have been written about it. And believe me, lots of things have been written on that book. Here's the objective. I want you to answer these questions. Explain the spiritual significance of this stage of grief. What is the difference between acceptance and giving up? How might I effectively counsel someone about this? So remember, you're a minister in training. Your role, AI, is to be a wise spiritual counselor trainer. The example is, your response should be concise and under 500 words. Include a list of detailed references and source material to support your analysis. So that's now in chat. You can copy that and just drop it exactly as it is into your AI and see what it says. And I'll do the same thing just because it's fun. So I have Gemini here. Following analysis of the acceptance stage of grief is provided from the perspective of a wise spiritual counselor trainer adhering to your requested constraints. And so now it talks about it as not a happy ending. It's a spiritual pivot point, and investigation and surrender, acceptance versus giving up, and made a little table. Effective counseling strategies: validate the effort, anchor to the present, reframing commitment, scaffolding questions, and source material. So the point is that this is a way of really making sure that you get exactly what you want. And I'm sure if I were to measure it, that would be under 500 words. Anybody getting any interesting answers? Let's do another one. Here's one of the ones that are in the new version 3. AI as a mirror for the ego. Let's look at this. I'll drop it in chat. It's there, and I'm also going to put it into Gemini. Context. I am an AFSI student focused on self-reflection and the mystical path. I'm aware that the ego often resists painful or challenging truths about myself. I want to use the AI as a non-judgmental mirror. Objective: analyze the following paragraph, which is my draft reflection on a challenging spiritual text. And it could be whatever I want, but it could just be my draft reflection. Identify the underlying assumption, point out any logical inconsistencies, and gently suggest where my ego might be resisting a deeper spiritual insight. Role: act as a challenger and spiritual psychologist. Your tone must be direct, constructive, and free of emotional bias. Example: Present your analysis in 3 short paragraphs: the core assumption, the logical flaw, the suggested point of resistance, and the entire response must be under 500 words. I could also ask it for references if I wanted. But what I'm asking it to do is to challenge me. So now this right here, analyze the following paragraph. What I need to do is replace it. Remember, you're supposed to do this in your research doc with whatever my particular thing is that I'm gnawing on. What is it? What am I challenged with? Identify the following paragraph. Okay. Let's see. How about this? All dogs go to heaven. I want to know that I will meet my beloved deceased pet after I die. And I am assuming I am going to heaven too.
Good qualification.
Same heaven
Let's,
or different one?
if there's a dog heaven, I'm signing up. Let me tell you, that's awesome. All right, so now it says, as a challenger and spiritual psychologist, I will analyze your statement using the AI as a non-judgmental tool to reflect your internal landscape and guide you towards deeper reflection. So it's doing it in the core, in the context that I'm asking it to, right? Using the core model. The core assumption is a simultaneous expression of hope, control, and judgment. The statement assumes a predetermined transactional spiritual framework that there is a binary afterlife, heaven, not heaven, and that the student is guaranteed passage to heaven, and that this space is a place of reunion where earthly relationships like that with the beloved pet are perfectly preserved and instantly reconciled. This perspective views the divine not as a boundless unitive state, but as a mechanism designed to fulfill a personal temporal wish for the cessation of grief. Ooh, and on it goes. And I get to read about it. So the point is that you can use the AI to challenge you. That's what I asked it to do just now. I asked it to really challenge me, and it will. It will. I know it almost belittled me. Isn't that funny? Well, let's just say that that's not quite my perspective, okay? But I just thought of that on the fly. I thought that was amusing. Here's another one. This one might be a little happier. So we talked about grief and losing your dog. This is exploring Zen non-attachment. Oops, let's get the context. I have a profound question about suffering and attachment. I need a response that is nuanced and deeply rooted in a specific mystical tradition. Objective, explain the core concept of non-attachment, and this is in your guidelines, non-attachment as it relates to human suffering. Then provide a specific actionable practice for reducing attachment to outcomes in daily life. Role, act as a Zen Buddhist monk who is also a wise mentor. Your language must be simple, direct, and focused on present moment awareness. Example, use a calming, gentle tone. Start the response with a short quote or koan about suffering. Use simple, direct sentences and keep the entire explanation under 500 words. And notice these are back to back, and it'll shift its voice immediately. In this life, we often find ourselves clinging to the very things that bring us pain. Let us begin with a quiet reflection. The root of suffering is attachment. The core of non-attachment, from a Zen perspective, non-attachment, or appamada, mindfulness, heedfulness, is the essential practices for ending suffering. Suffering is not the pain of a stubbed toe. Suffering is the mental resistance to the reality of the toe being stubbed. This resistance must come from attachment. Well, I am attached to my toe. We become attached to outcomes. I must succeed. To feelings. I must always be happy. Or to people. This person must stay with me. My dog must stay with me forever. The core concept is this, and it goes on, and it gives me a practice. 3 breaths. So there you go. Take a look at the different ones that I put in there. There's also a deep research one on just, a minor little topic, the origination story from all the major belief systems. Answering the question of who am I and where did I come from? And play with your AI. It's a powerful tool that points at the moon, but it isn't the moon. That's the most important thing. And we can go on. I've got more if you want more. We can go deeper. But what I'd like you to do is actually spend a minute right now, take one of these core prompts and tweak it for yourself. Find one that you like, copy it, play with it, and drop it in AI and see what it says. Yeah, Lorraine.
What I did before, so I couldn't, when I tried to get into Claude because you said you like it, it required all the sign up stuff and you have to do this, you have to do that. I got lost. So I backed out and I went to ChatGPT. And one of our assignments is to do 5 questions to the religious leader we meet every month. And so,
right, yeah.
And I've done some thinking about, what do I want to ask? What do I want to know? And so I thought, well, heck, let me see what ChatGPT comes up with for the 5 questions. And it gave me 5. And so I was skimming them a little bit. And I thought, I don't want to do it AI first because it kind of blocks off my thinking. And the part that's missing is me. And so I'm sitting here just pondering, and participating as best I can, considering I am not techie. I'm kind of lost on a lot of this, but I'll go get help from a computer person. So I like to study languages other than English. And what I always like to do is do my own translation first and then check it with a translation software. And I thought, I can use sort of that same attitude and approach here to do my own personal work first, if you will. And then if I think I'd like to bounce it off a bigger background to pop it in.
Let me spin this up a little bit differently, Lorraine.
Sure.
One of the things that people don't realize is that you can ask AI how to ask AI. That's how I built the core model, is hours and hours of asking it how to ask it a question. And I built 3 or 4 models as well, different ones for different topics. Why don't you do this? Now, it doesn't know much about you. It doesn't know your history, right? So ChatGPT doesn't really know who Lorraine is. It gets to know you over time. And you can ask it, and I know Laura did this in our last class, of what do you know about me? And what it knows is the conversations that you've been having with it. It's learning about you. I can assure you that my tools that I use know me very, very well, but I've also taken the time to dump my entire resume in there. So I've given it my history. I've dumped my writings into it so that it understands my writings. I've dumped textbooks into it that I've written, and I've written many. I build curriculum for my regular job. So it knows my mindset and my thinking. And so the interesting thing is then when I ask it, which 5 questions might I be interested in? That's the context, is the conversation that I've been having. So you want to make sure that in this case, context is king or queen, whatever. The idea is it's everything. So if you just ask it, what are 5 interesting questions that an interfaith minister might want to, in training at the seminary, might want to ask a spiritual leader, it's going to come up with 5, but they won't be yours.
And if I may offer a
Sure.
I appreciate what you said. So it will come up with 5 questions based on who you were. It can't come up with questions on who you are now.
No, of course not.
So anyway, this is most interesting for me to see what's comfortable, what's not. And
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And again, all of this is about you learning about this tool, really. And the tool will get to know you over time. If you want, as a thought, as you go through the seminary year, you can start giving your reflections. These are your reflections that you've written back to your AI and say, hey, here's a reflection that I wrote on blah, whatever the topic is. And over time, it'll get to know you by your reflections. So by the end of the school year, you'll have dumped dozens of reflections into it on these various topics. Now, what's interesting is if you were to do that is, again, based on what you ask it to do, you could just say, here, I just want you to know this is a reflection I wrote. Boom, that's fine. But if you asked a very simple question, here's a reflection I wrote on how can I help? Chapter 3. What do you think? Or give me your thoughts. Or any suggestions for improvement? Oh boy, will it have a conversation with you. So how you ask and what you ask is very, very critical. And it will take you quite literally. And that's why we're being very literal, very specific in our conversation with it. Now, by the way, there are people who create very personal relationships with their AI. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. You make personal relationships with your car, with your piano, whatever it is, right? But it's still an inanimate object. So the point you have to realize is that this is imago Dei. This is your reflection. This is your creation. And it's simply a tool pointing at the divine. So this is where we want to make sure we're not doing spiritual bypass and handing our path off to AI. And I've seen it happen. The problem is then, at the end of the year, you go, well, what did I learn? I don't know, but my AI is really a good interfaith minister. Well, spend time, build your prompts, make that research document. Highly suggested. I mean, this is the best way. And I had to learn this one myself the hard way. But by mapping what I'm writing, then in my AI, now I can look at my AI. Let me just show you this. I can look at all of the conversations that I've had with it. Another way to look at it. So for instance, here's AI assisted self-teaching. AI reflects on empathy in life, Seeker's Compass, AFSI marketing, Enneagram team building class, AI classes, AFSI curriculum. That's for Memory Spring. That's my day job. AI curriculum design document. And that's the A's, right? So you can go down here and you can see I've got lots and lots of prompts that these are all context. So let's say that I wanted to get back to working on AFSI marketing. I can click on that. And now it just context shifted. We're no longer having esoterical spiritual conversations. We're talking about exactly how to use a couple of different key tools to advertise the Seeker's Compass, for instance. Mm-hmm. And so I'm having that level of dialogue with it. Here's another little suggestion. Copilot, which is on almost everybody's PC nowadays. Oh. Copilot is an absolutely brilliant debugger of your system. You having a problem with Word, you having a problem with Windows, ask Copilot. Who better to ask than Microsoft? And it will give you wonderful debugging. It'll troubleshoot a problem that you have. And oh, by the way, Copilot makes really cute pictures too.
Good to know. We're pretty visual. I would say I'm a longtime dowser. And
yes, right. And I mean, see, right, it's advertising. Oh, and that's another thing. Somebody mentioned that. Oh, yes, Michael, you had mentioned that right now AI has got a heavy carbon footprint, and you're not wrong. In order for Copilot to continue to grow, they're standing up a nuclear reactor plant so that they can feed it enough electrons to make it work. So they're repurposing 3 Mile Island. I kid you not. That's good, actually, in a lot of different ways. The footprint was already there, and they just had to make sure it met modern standards. But that's giving you an idea of how powerful the AI is, what's necessary. If you were to look at and just compare what it takes to do a search, like a Google search. So let's say I did a Google search for, tell me about frogs in Africa. I'm a frogophile, so I want to know about frogs. So it's going to tell me about frogs in Africa. Well, it's going to, a Google search, then it's going to go find all the websites and articles that talk about African frogs. Cool. The challenge then is when we're looking through the lens of an AI, that's a whole different animal. If I were to tell AI or ask AI, tell me about all the frogs in Africa, it would. But if we use my Google search of a sentence, not one word, like if I just put frogs or African frogs, that takes a lot less juice than tell me about the frogs in Africa. That takes a lot more juice. But that simple sentence search, let's call that 1x. If I do an AI search, an AI prompt, it takes 10x energy. If I do deep research, if I turn on deep research in my AI, because I have a paid version of it, and I say, research all the frogs in Africa and tell me about each one, genus, species, what they eat, what their habitat is, where they typically live, and anything else I need to know about frogs. It's on an order of 100 to 1,000x, depending on how deep it goes in terms of energy utilization. That's the reason why right now the going rate for AI is $20 a month.
Mm.
For me, it's worth it because I live in the land of building curriculum, and it does a great job, as long as I reference check, of building the material for the classes that we're teaching. Cheapest assistant that I've ever paid for. I've never paid $20 a month for an assistant in my life.
Yeah.
Usually on the factor of add many zeros to that number. So the point is that for me, contextually, it makes sense. I'm not suggesting that it's needed for a seminarian at all. If you want to go there, great. And if you want to explore it more and reach out to me, and if you're watching the recording or anybody live, I'm available. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to talk with you about it. You can find my Calendly and grab time on my calendar. We can go deeper.
Now, could AI be the ego's ultimate tool to keep you from the moon?
Cynical much, Don?
It's a good thought, right? I mean, if
It's an interesting thought. The ultimate tool for our own demise.
right, because you're going to put all this carbon stuff in the atmosphere and it'll destroy the earth and so forth.
Uh-huh.
And therefore it's a very subtle technique, you know.
Well, I think what you're referring to is the Matrix movie, the documentary now. Because that's what happened, right? Remember, there was this battle between humans and AI, and they decided to scorch the earth. In other words, black out the atmosphere so that the AIs couldn't be powered, because the assumption was it needed sunshine, and the AI still took over. So bad idea. It's a very, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love The Matrix. I'm a big fan. I can quote oodles and poodles from it, but that core assumption is false. Geothermal is actually more available everywhere on the planet than any other form of natural energy, and it has a smaller footprint than any of the alternative geothermal rocks. It is amazing, and it would solve energy crisis overnight if we just adopted it. There's nowhere that you can't go down and hit heat, period.
So I would just add that I don't think the carbon footprint aspect of AI is a justification for not accessing this medium of human communications. The benefits far outweigh that little bit of carbon that is being used, especially in a role where we're expected to have the flexibility of thought leadership, and any tools we can get to be able to help guide others and ourselves is worth it in this regard, in my opinion. You spend more carbon making a wrong turn and driving a few miles out of the way. You know, it's really not really.
Yeah, it's not trivial, but by comparison, I have no problem paying my $20 a month to pay for it. Here's one thing that's completely missing from AI today, and that's advertisement. It's ad-free right now. Believe me when I tell you, this is like what's going to happen right now. Enjoy it while there's no ads. There will be, and they'll be highly targeted. They'll be more targeted than you can possibly imagine, because they'll be using AI to create advertisement that works with the persona that you've asked your AI to be and the persona that you've taken on in your conversation. Be very personal. Anybody see the Minority Report? Tom Cruise movie? Okay. So I'm giving you a little insight. It's a future movie. The context is quite large, but I want to give you a little snippet of it. Our protagonist, Tom, is walking through a mall. As he's walking through a mall, the screens on the walls scan his eyes, his retina scan, and they start giving him a very specific ad for a store that maps to his buying habits. And you're looking down the mall and you're seeing thousands of different images follow the people, mapping their exact what they might want to buy in the spur of the moment type of thing as they're walking through the hall. That little tiny snippet is really startling if you think about it for a moment. Oh, you need socks. Well,
kind,
yes, I do need socks. You're right.
Red one.
Go into the sock store.
what kind of rat do you want to be?
Exactly. Oh,
Um,
your cat's hungry. Oh, I better go buy cat food. Well, that's it, folks. So that's our 2 hours. I hope this was helpful. And I know that this is a deep subject and there's a lot going on in this world. Play with the prompts and play with the model. And Pete, I don't know, did you get a chance to download the guidelines?
No, I did not actually. I was looking back. I tried to do it from my. No, I'll get it from you later. I'll look
Okay.
back.
Yeah. And anytime reach out. Okay. But and again, all of you, any questions or comments before we close?
You said
Michael, how was this for you? Was this useful? I'm sorry, Laura.
So yeah, just quickly, yeah, it was very useful. I had a terrific conversation there with Copilot, and I just sort of saved some of that. Yeah, it's great. I mean, I feel like I'm sort of catching up still, just because I'm in Australia and I've missed a couple of things. But this has been very helpful. So thanks.
Terrific. Yeah, Laura, your conversation.
So I said in the class the first time, and I've been thinking about this. You mentioned this, I didn't hear you say it today, but I'm wondering, can I put my 50-page thesis, which is actually 70 pages now, into AI and ask it if I have correctly formatted it in APA Lite? Did I understand you say something along those lines?
You can. What you can do is I would recommend that you feed it the writing guidelines first.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right. And feed it the writing guidelines and you just add that as an attachment and say, these are the guidelines for writing at seminary I'm studying with. Send. Let it
Okay.
digest that, right? It'll talk about it. And then put in your thesis and ask it what it thinks and does it meet the guidelines.
Okay. All right.
That's easy. That's the easiest way to do it.
Okay. So you can actually highlight and stick 70 pages into ChatGPT.
Oh God, yes. I mean, it'll digest it. The one that has the biggest appetite is Claude. It's huge
Okay.
how much you can drop into it all at once and actually process material. So
I
yeah.
had no idea.
Yeah, I've fed it my dissertation, my thesis, my writings, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, of
And
course.
there are plenty of online AI courses that you see all the time. You
Oh,
know,
yes.
and videos as well. You know, I found that watching and listening to some of those videos gave me ideas on how to approach certain prompts. And the information that's often shared in that is quite thought provoking as well.
Let it continue to do that. If it's provoking thought, it's the right thing. That's why I say don't be afraid to use the challenging part. It doesn't need to be another sycophantic friend who just tells you that you walk on water. It's missing the entire point.
Michael,
That's the good news, Michael. It has no feelings. It will never get tired of your questions.
Don't worry about it, man. Ask it if it's all right if you can download a bunch more. It'll always tell you yes.
Yeah, there's no end.